Greetings to all the viewers from across the world. A very warm welcome to this international conference on India and Trinidad and Tobago relations, organized by Tillotoma Foundation. I'm Tanisha Acharya from Tillotoma Foundation. Tillotoma Foundation is a global think tank working in the areas of international relations, area studies, financial, environmental, scientific, strategic, and defense policy. We are honored to have among us His Excellency Dr. Roger Gopal, High Commissioner of Trinidad and Tobago to India, who will deliver the keynote address. Other distinguished speakers are Ms. Shalima Mohammed, Dr. Kumar Mahabir, Ms. Bindu Devkinath Maharaj, and Ms. Charlene Maharaj. Today's discussion will be chaired and moderated by Dr. Gauri Shankar Gupta, former Indian High Commissioner to Trinidad and Tobago and Distinguished Advisor, Tillotoma Foundation. The rich common cultural heritage and the strong connection between India and Trinidad and Tobago will be discussed in detail at this international conference on India and Trinidad and Tobago relations organized by Tillotoma Foundation. I thank all the speakers at this conference for being here with us. Audience members may feel free to send in questions or comments. Let me now hand over the session to Ambassador Dr. Gauri Shankar Gupta. Sir.
Namaskar. I am so much delighted to be in the company of some of the very august people from a land called Trinidad and Tobago, far away from India, yet very close to our hearts. I was there for 3 years between 2014 and 2016, and I have very, very vivid and pleasant memory of that place and my association with the people in that country. So I warmly welcome all of you to this conference on India and Trinidad and Tobago relations. I would just like to say a few words before I introduce our chief speaker today. I would like to just actually read out a poem to introduce the subject. This poem I had written when I was posted in Port of Spain. The title of the poem is A Tribute. Uttering lies and false promises, driven by sheer greed, colonial powers transported millions across the seas. Like cattle, they were battered during the long voyage. They were completely shattered. Some died and some survived. Far away from their homes, driven by lies and deception, in the state of helplessness, they landed in the Caribbean. Exhausted, drained, and lost, they met with hostile reception. Torn between destiny and hope, they reconciled to total humiliation. Although tormented, they took it in their stride, considered a rebirth, beginning a new life. With fortitude and determination, following baptism by fire, slowly they emerged from the debris of disaster. Over time, they started shining bright like millions of stars in a pitch dark night. Forming part of a composite culture, today their proud and confident progeny constitute a core component of the Caribbean society and economy. It is time to pay tribute to those tormented and valiant souls who suffered yet live with fortitude. Far away from their homes, they constructed a new home, changed the course of history, defeated trickery, and immortalized victory. This is the story of the people who were transported in primitive boats from India to Trinidad and Tobago way back between 1840 and 1917. And those people who suffered in the beginning, but with their valiant effort, came out brilliantly, and some of them have risen to the position of president and the prime ministers of that country. Some Nobel laureates like V.S. Naipaul, Prime Minister Vasudev Pandey, Prime Minister Kamla Prasad Bisesar, President Noor Mohammad Hassan Ali, all these made their great names. And then, of course, Sir Sridhar Rampal, who became the Secretary General of Commonwealth. So we can see the people who are suffering so much in the past have risen and now shining like stars in the vast blue sky. So I would like to introduce this subject with these words. And now I would like to introduce our keynote speaker, His Excellency, Dr. Roger Gopal. First of all, I must thank Dr. Roger Gopal for his fullest support in organizing this event possible. In fact, he's fully supported and we were able to put together speakers for the event and the program. And Dr. Kumar Mahabir was very, active and very, very supportive of the event as well. So Dr. Roger Gopal is High Commissioner accredited to India, Bangladesh, Indonesia, Japan, Singapore, and Sri Lanka. He covers a very large number of countries from Delhi. He has visited, as he was mentioning just now, very historical places in, of course, in Uttar Pradesh, Ayodhya, Rishikesh. He has been to Varanasi. He has been to various places in Haryana and Kurukshetra. He has also been invited to Ladakh to be the chief guest on one of the major events there. He has addressed PhD Chamber of Commerce in Delhi. He did his MBA from Arthur Locke School of Graduates. I remember that school I visited 2-3 times during my stay in Port of Spain. And he did his chartered accountancy between 1996 and 2001. He was then High Commissioner to South Africa, not only to South Africa, but to several African countries. Those included Angola, Namibia, Mauritius, and many more, Zambia, all those countries. So he had a vast, I would say, expanse of the territories and countries to be covered from South Africa. He also runs Gopal and Associates Management Consultancy and Training, which was an organization before he came to Delhi. And he was before that a senior lecturer in the university there in Trinidad and Tobago. Of course, he's apart from his educational qualification, his diplomatic assignments, his personal interest in history and culture, he is also a practitioner of yoga and meditation, and he is working on comparative religions. So I would like to welcome Dr. Roger Gopal to deliver his keynote address. We are happy to have such a distinguished person to deliver his views on this subject. Dr. Roger Gopal, you're welcome.
Yes, thank you very much, Ambassador Dr. Gauri Shankar Gupta, for that very special introduction. But I must say that in the words of Swami Chinmayananda, I am not the pointed, I am only the pointer. So we are all just servants. We are just instruments and vessels for a higher purpose. And that purpose is to ensure that there's a greater consciousness of goodness that will affect the world in a positive way, in a positive manner. Namaste to all, and greetings to all members of the Tillotoma Foundation. I also want to pay particular homage, respect to Dr. Kumar Mahabir, a celebrated writer. In fact, I must say that I've been reading Kumar Mahabir's work even before I ever met Dr. Kumar Mahabir. And I met him when I was around 21 years old. And I realized early in my life that he was a scholar of par excellence, an Indian activist, and Dr. Kumar Mahabir is one of the most humble persons that I have known, despite all his great achievements. Also, to our other distinguished speakers, Ms. Shalima Mohammed, who I am finally meeting despite our regular email exchanges over the past few weeks. Ms. Bindu Maharaj, it's also a pleasure to see you. And Ms. Charlene Maharaj, it's a pleasure to see you as well. And I feel so much at home because I am listening to my accent. So it made me feel so Trini that I was about to say that I really could do with a doubles right now or an alupai. But I guess that is not possible. But thank you all for participating in this very important discussion. And before I go into my topic, just as an introduction or prelude to what I would like to share, it actually stems from Dr. Kumar Mahabir. In growing up, I did not grow in an environment that was conducive to the knowledge of the Indo-Caribbean history. My environment was actually somewhat very different, that literally stifled any knowledge that was associated with Indian history, Hindu history, or any aspect of the Indus civilization. Then I entered into my very early 20s, and I was introduced to Dr. Kumar Mahabir, and I also give some respect to Devant Maharaj, who's not on this forum, but was very instrumental in providing me with that material and discussions, and very heavy discussions on Indo culture, the role of Indians in the diaspora, our history in India, the concept of the Aryan invasion, and also debunking the Aryan invasion to show that those aspects were never foreign to us. There was no invasion, and go deeper into this history. And it intrigued me tremendously. And in so doing, I started realizing that the relationship between Trinidad and Tobago and India far surpass just these trade fairs that we see. It goes beyond Shah Rukh Khan owning the Trinidad Night Riders. And it definitely goes beyond the Indian movies and all the lovely songs that Lata Mangeshkar sang. What exactly is the relationship between Trinidad and Tobago and India? And despite the fact that we have established diplomatic relations, I will dare say that the relationship between our two countries is based on an ideological and a cultural establishment. And unless we first understand what that means, then we really have no idea what that relationship is. And so I just, as I said before, wanted to give Dr. Mahabir full credit, which I probably never did before, in providing that initial groundwork, encouragement, and knowledge to me. So hats off to you, Dr. Mahabir, and I'm sure that you did that for so many other people. That was my introduction, and if you don't mind, I would love to now share my screen. So just give me one quick second. I need to find a way to share the contents of my screen. So share. Okay, that did not work. So give me one quick second, cancel that. So I want to share a PowerPoint, and I'm just looking at how that might be done. So I see the screen sharing.
The organizers should help in working out these details of the sharing of the screen.
Yes. And okay, so okay, should I go into share? What do I do? Share screen was canceled. Go into share. So okay, so I'm on share.
And then there's an option called share screen. Please select that.
Right. I select that.
And then hopefully you will have the option of sharing the entire screen, a particular window like that.
Yes, I saw that. Yes.
Okay. After, yeah, please select what you want to share and then kindly click on the option share at the bottom of the dialog box.
Okay. So share window. So I need to okay, so
It is best if you first open the PowerPoint and then
right. Yes, my PowerPoint is open. So I am sorry about this little technical glitch. Aha, I get it there. Right. So let me, good. Share. How is that? Are you seeing my PowerPoint screen?
yeah.
It will come now, yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, we can see it now.
All right. Perfect. Thank you very much. So what I propose to address today is basically the role of the High Commission in India. The reason that I thought that this topic is of particular worth for this discussion is that many questions have arisen in the not so distant past about the role of the High Commission and in particular the High Commissioner. And I think it is actually a good question. It was raised in the media. So today I will share with you some insight into this particular role, the role of the High Commission, and in particularly the role of the High Commissioner in India. Now, as we know, India and Trinidad and Tobago shares a relationship that is dated almost 176 years old. And in fact, while the world celebrates Swami Vivekananda's triumphant entry into the Americas and brought the concept of Hindutva, Hindu ideologies to the Americas, almost 50 years before Swami Vivekananda stepped foot in America, there were Hindus in Trinidad and Tobago. In 1845, they were already practicing puja, and they were doing Hawan, and they were singing Hanuman Chalisa, and they were reading the Ramayana. In the year 1962, which was long after indentureship ended, Trinidad and Tobago and India established diplomatic relations. Now, coming to the year 2021, times have changed, and the world is no longer the same. As a result, strategies must change, and the very nature of our relationship, diplomatically and otherwise, must change. So what we had to do was to revise and constantly revise that framework for what diplomacy means. So my presentation today will highlight to you some of the key strategic imperatives that we establish between Trinidad and Tobago and India. So these are the areas that I pay particular attention to and which I will address today. Of course, any diplomatic relationship is based on government-to-government relations. Within that, we have identified the three major areas between Trinidad and Tobago and India. And I know my other speakers will talk to these issues, so I will not go into much depth. But one particular area is trade and investment. The second area is education and technology. And the third area is culture. What I propose to do is to share with you exactly what we are doing rather than what are the treaties and the different MOUs and those things. I will just share what my mission has actually been doing in each of these areas. So let us consider trade and investment for a moment. Now, India consists of 1.4 billion people. Trinidad and Tobago is just 1.3. So one might argue that many people in India do not know Trinidad and Tobago. And that is a matter of fact. But the key to it, if I had to respond to that, to such a comment, I will say it is not necessarily how many people know us or know about us, but it is getting the right people to know about Trinidad and Tobago, and that we know the right people in order to make the strategic connections. In the area of trade and investment, that is what we have done. So we started working with various bodies, trade and investment bodies. Some of the large ones that we have done a number of work with include the Confederation of Indian Industry, CII, which they themselves possess over 300,000 members. If we take a look at the PhD Chamber of Commerce and Industry, which we have done a number of work with, and if you looked at the newspaper last week, Thursday, in the Trinidad Newsday, page 15, you would have noticed that InvestTT, together with the High Commission of Trinidad and Tobago to India, did a major investment conclave. And we are working on signing an MOU between InvestTT, which is part of the Ministry of Trade and Industry, and the PhD Chamber of Commerce and Industry. PhD has a membership of over 130,000. The Federation of Indian Chambers of Commerce and Industry, which is another large chamber in India, operating in multiple sectors, has a membership of over 250,000. On the 27th of July, we have another investment conclave with the Global India Business Forum, GIBF, which they themselves possess over 90,000 members. And of course, we work with many other trade organizations throughout India. And next week, Monday and Tuesday, we will be dealing with some in the ICT and the business process outsourcing sectors in Mumbai. I have been here.
You can also change the slides.
Yeah, but there's no need. I'm still on the slide.
Okay.
Yes.
And also you can make it full screen if possible. It will look better.
Is it not full screen?
No.
Oh, it's not. Okay. One second. I am under the assumption that it was. So, okay, one quick second there. So let me go on to this. And okay, tell me if it is full screen now. Is it?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Right. I have been in India for 18 months since my appointment. So far, we did 15 trade and investment conferences, despite the lockdown and the pandemic. We have collaborated in Trinidad and Tobago with Export TT, Invest TT, and they are the investment agency of the Ministry of Trade and Industry of Trinidad and Tobago, and also the Trinidad and Tobago Chamber of Industry and Commerce. The main areas that my High Commission focus on, we call it our PIO, which is not people of Indian origin, but it means prioritized investment opportunities. So there are 4 areas. One is manufacturing. The second one is business process outsourcing and ICT. The third is logistics. And the fourth is transshipment or ship layout. Let's take a look at the area of culture. Culture is a major element of what defines us as a people. It is based on our practices, our traditions, our ideology. And Indian culture has become part of the cultural landscape of Trinidad and Tobago. And even though we face a pandemic, the cultural ties between Trinidad and Tobago and India remain strong. So for instance, we have done a number of work with the first logo that you see there is the Ayodhya Research Institute. It was headed by Dr. Y.P. Singh, who visited Trinidad and Tobago over 5 times. We also collaborated with the government of Uttar Pradesh And in fact, just about 2 to 3 months back, I had dinner with the Chief Minister, Yogi Adityanath ji, speaking about enhancing and strengthening the cultural ties between our countries. We work with the government of India through the Indian Council for Cultural Relations, and also from the hills of the Himalayas, looking at the flow of the Ganges, we work with the government of Uttarakhand, Rishikesh. The main bodies in Trinidad and Tobago that partner with us are the National Ramlila Council of Trinidad and Tobago, the University of the West Indies, in particular their Department of History, and the National Council for Indian Culture, the NCIC. Some of our major achievements have been so far 3 Ramlila conferences in the year 2020 during the lockdown between the Ayodhya Research Institute, the National Council for Indian Culture, the Uttar Pradesh government, and the government of India to host these 3 Ramlila conferences. A result of these 3 Ramlila conferences, we launched 3 books, Ramlila in the Caribbean, of which I have a copy sitting right next to me. We also contributed tremendously and led in the writing of a Ramayana encyclopedia. And in it, we have a major contribution from Trinidad and Tobago that was made by Dr. Sherry-Ann Singh from the Department of History, University of the West Indies, and she's in fact the chair of the Department of History. We held multiple conferences in the areas of Trinidad Bhojpuri, because Trinidad do not necessarily speak Hindi, at least it was not our original language. We also did conferences on Indo-Trinidadian traditions, history, and I recently spoke on the Ramayana in Trinidad and Tobago. We did the same with Bhagavad Gita. Trinidad and Tobago also participated in the International Yoga Day, which was hosted by the government of India, and the High Commission of Trinidad and Tobago was the chief guest. And as I was sharing before, we meaning the High Commission of Trinidad and Tobago, participated in the restoration of the Saraswati River. We also did a puja on the banks of Saraswati River, and I guess you would know it would have been a Saraswati puja. And we have been in discussion with some major stakeholders in India to establish a Mahabharat museum in Trinidad and Tobago, and that discussion is ongoing, and it is quite exciting actually. The area of education and technology is very important to me because part of me is still an academic. We have developed and developing a number of relationships with universities across India, covering a wide field of knowledge, including science, ICT, medicine, yoga, spiritual studies, languages, and history. What you see there is just a small portion of the universities and institutions that we are working with. In fact, some of them are already looking at signing MOUs with other institutions in Trinidad and Tobago. What we have worked on are scholarships to Trinidad and Tobago nationals in the field of technology and Hindi. 18 joint conferences we have conducted thus far between 2020 and this part of 2021 in the area of languages, Trinidad and Tobago culture, history, education, and philosophy. We are doing research collaborations on Hinduism in Trinidad and Tobago, the Indus civilization, and Indo-Caribbean history. We have had joint publications, including books, and faculty exchanges in the areas of yoga, Vedanta, natural medicines, etc. And in the area of diplomatic relations, there are a number of MOUs signed between the government of Trinidad and Tobago and the government of India, covering a wide range of fields, including trade and investment, culture, and education. So as you can see, the journey from Calcutta to Trinidad and Tobago continues not only from India to Trinidad and Tobago, but also from Trinidad and Tobago to India. We are now having this opportunity to share our ideals, to share our ideologies, to share our experiences, and to not only have Indian influence in Trinidad and Tobago, but to also influence India with our customs and our traditions as it evolved over time. So basically, that is the role of the High Commission of Trinidad and Tobago in India. That is basically my role, my job. And just to summarize, it is based on government to government, diplomatic relations, divided mainly into the areas of trade and investment, education and technology, and culture. So on that note, I would close and I say Dhanyavad. From the bottom of my heart, I thank the organizers for giving us this grand opportunity, and I welcome the other speakers to share on the history and the connection between our two countries. So, Mr. Dr. Gupta, thank you again.
Thank you very much, Excellency, for your expose on wide range of issues, starting from investment, cultural ties, Ramlila. I remember there were 35 locations where Ramlilas are held in Trinidad and Tobago every year. The history, the Gita, Mahabharat Museum, education and technological collaborations, and of course conferences on multiple issues. So I congratulate you on the great work you are doing. So the flow has now started from Port of Spain to Calcutta, which began from Calcutta to Port of Spain way back in 1835. Thank you very much, Excellency, for your presence and for your very educative and rich explanation on our relations. Now I would like to introduce Salima Mohammed. Salima ji, welcome. And Salima Mohammed has master's degree from Franklin University, Ohio, in business psychology. She is also working in the field of health and wellness and traditional and alternative healing systems. So she would speak on India and Trinidad trade relations. So Salima ji, welcome. I would request you to make your presentation in about 10 minutes to 12 minutes.
Thank you very much. Are you hearing me?
Yes, we're hearing you.
Yes, we can hear you.
Assalamu alaikum to everyone and namaskar again. I really must say I am privileged to be here on this forum with such important people. I want to say thank you very much to Dr. Gopal. Your assistance was tremendous. And Dr. Mahabir, thank you very much for presenting this opportunity to me. Dr. Gupta, it's always nice to see you. You haven't been in Trinidad for a while, and I remember you from the Yoga Day, the first International Yoga Day, am I right? Yes? I'm trying to share my screen with you as I say this. Dr. Gopal, after we share, where did you go to?
Right. So I opened the PowerPoint first.
I have it.
So once it's open on your screen, then you go to share and share screen. And so you will see screen sharing tips, share screen. Once you click on entire screen, then you press share. And so on Windows, go to Windows, and
Right. So
I'm
I clicked.
not sure you have it. You got through?
I clicked entire screen, but the share is not happening.
Please do not click entire screen. Click just Windows. Select the particular window, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Select the window. Okay, great. Thank you.
It's here.
Let me just get it into slideshow.
Yeah.
So Dr. Gopal was so very complete that he did a lot of my work. So thank you very much, sir. But when I looked at the topic, it occurred to me that trade would be important to discuss. And simply because of what you are seeing on your screen right now, trade came into the spotlight over the distribution of the military vaccines to Barbados. Barbados is our neighboring island, and Barbados was able to acquire 100,000 vaccines before any other island, including Trinidad and Tobago. So when that news broke, we felt a little bit slighted, and many questions arose out of that. So here we have Prime Minister Modi actually replying to Prime Minister Motley from Barbados, saying special friendship between our nations has always helped us bridge geographic distances. And so we in Trinidad and Tobago was wondering about our bridge as well. Barbados was kind enough to extend India's generosity by giving us 2,000 doses initially and sharing among the Caribbean islands. So it worked well. But this brought up a little bit of a controversy, and our Prime Minister, Dr. Rowley, sought to explain or defend, either which way, by looking at why people would feel a little bit slighted. And so he said, I want to focus here in this comment on what he said about ancestry or by political persuasion. And then the first time he heard about vaccines, he said, was from local doctors who was spoken to by the Indian High Commissioner, that is the Indian High Commissioner in Port of Spain, who did not speak to the government of Trinidad and Tobago. This was the information that we, the Trinidad and Tobago public, was receiving. The second time he heard about the vaccines was through local businessmen hoping to bring vaccines into the country. And I want to focus really on the key points. Ancestry here, as well as the fact that we have local doctors who were spoken to. We also have business people who were establishing some kind of connection with India again, and this time to purchase vaccines and bring them into the country. It's important for us to look at this, and I think Dr. Gopal alluded to it already. But when we consider that in Trinidad and Tobago, we have a total population of just 1.4 million, and out of that, 525,000 are people of Indian descent. In total, there are 825,000 people of Indian descent, let's say Indo-Trinidadians, but 300,000 of them live outside of Trinidad and Tobago. Only 525,000 of us live here. There are approximately 100 Indo-Trinidadians living in India, perhaps. That's according to Dr. Gopal so far. But from India, we have well over 4,000 NRI families in Trinidad and Tobago. So I think we were nicely placed to receive a gift as well from India, because we have a large Indo-Trinidadian population. We have as well 1.4 million people, and we have Indian nationals living here. At the same time, diplomatic relations aside, we are not interested in why it went to Barbados first. We understand politics to some extent, but what actually happened on the ground is what is important. Before I get to that, I just want to focus on the trade that has actually happened between Trinidad and Tobago and India. Total exports, and these are recent figures. We have an export-import relationship, and what I want to say about this very quickly is that there is need for improvement. We see negative growth in the relationship. And while there might have been a little bit of improvement earlier this year, we are only now coming to the close of the second quarter. So we'll have to wait to see what happens next and in what areas. Thank you again, Dr. Gopal. India imports from Trinidad and Tobago mostly these products. The list is longer, but these are the largest imports: mineral fuels, mineral oils, bituminous substances, mineral waxes, inorganic chemicals, ores, slag, and ash. And we see that over the period 2015 to 2020, imports, which is designated by the orange line, Indian imports from Trinidad and Tobago, would have fluctuated. So the spike in 2018 to 2019 was particularly in the area of iron. And I think that might have to do with the fact that ArcelorMittal, which is a large company that closed down in that period, might have been sending material across to India. But we see 2019 to 2020, those imports again would have declined. While the blue line represents India's exports to Trinidad and Tobago, and so that is fairly uniform. So we continued to have access to Indian goods, and some of the items that are exported to us in Trinidad and Tobago includes a large amount of iron and steel as raw material for the iron and steel industry. Varma Steel was established in 1994. This is a company that is run by NRIs. Physicians Pharmaceuticals Limited, also run by NRIs, and they started in the 1990s and possibly before that. They import pharmaceuticals and supply pharmacies, drugstores, beauty salons. Planet Ayurveda, there's a distributor in Trinidad and Tobago, Martin Dean. So we have access to Ayurvedic products from them and some other sources. I'm just outlining a few here. We have tobacco products being exported to us as well. We have plastics being exported to us, and this particular company is bringing in a number of items, including, very importantly, water bottles, which will act like a filter. We also have dried fruits and so on, and dried fruits, nuts, spices. So those are some of the majority foodstuff, or the larger quantities of foodstuff that we have brought into us. Again, this is not an extensive list. I'm just highlighting the main items. In terms of machinery and equipment, we have trucks being imported from India. And interestingly, this is by the ANSA group of companies, one of the largest conglomerates in Trinidad and Tobago, which incidentally, earlier this year, also bought out the Bank of Baroda, which was operating in Trinidad and Tobago. It is now known as the ANSA Bank Limited. So our relationship has to do with both manufactured items as well as financial services. I want to plug in here as well that we have a lot of service personnel by way of education, by way of health. We have a number of tertiary institute educators. We have a number of surgeons, medical specialists, nurses, excellent medical care from India. We have a lot of Indian businessmen as well. So they help to enhance the trade relationship. The relationship is a strong one, but it needs to be strengthened. And so in 2019, when Dr. Rowley and Dr. Modi met, Prime Minister Modi, they would have discussed areas for attention by way of resilience against climate change, HR development, strengthening the technical capacity between the two countries, health and education. Health and education I highlighted because the private sector in Trinidad and Tobago is also looking at that strongly. We want to enhance those areas in Trinidad and Tobago. So some of the key areas that the private sector is looking at for further investment: IT enabling services, pharmaceuticals again, agriculture and biotechnology, new energy. The focus now is on renewable energy because our oil and gas production has declined. Apart from that, we are environmentally conscious. Textiles and garments. While we have a lot of garments from India, through especially the trade fairs, there is a growing need, and this has arisen over the pandemic, there's a growing need for textiles, particularly for the manufacture of health and safety products, masks, uniforms for people working in industry especially. Automobiles, we also have a need for automobiles, especially if they are energy efficient. In terms of services, this is very close to my heart, Ayurveda and Wellness. I think we need to place greater emphasis on this area. I know we had a chair at the University of the West Indies, Dr. Hemant Toshikani would have been here somewhere in 2012, but his stay here was short-lived. I really do not believe that after he left, which may have been somewhere around 2015, I don't think we have a chair again in Ayurveda. I stand to be corrected on that if anybody knows. We also want to enhance tourism and medical tourism. Higher education, obviously, films, music, and entertainment, which Dr. Gopal would have spoken to. I don't even need to say much about this because by now, Dr. Gopal has eloquently stated his services are available, and there are agencies in Trinidad and Tobago that is willing and able to help. The High Commission was established in 1969, so we know the relationship is a long-standing one. But in a research paper that was done in 2015, Evans pointed out that it appears that there's a hesitant and somewhat apathetic approach of the Indian government towards enhanced ties with the Latin America and Caribbean region. On the other hand, there's a proactive and enthusiastic approach by the Indian business sector, so that Indian trade with this region, the Latin America and Caribbean region, is growing manyfold and increasing at the same rate as China's, though the volume is 10 times less. So we see areas for improvement right there. Now, the most visible evidence of trade between our country, both countries, is the Indian Expo. We have a number of these expos across Trinidad and Tobago, to the extent that they've become so competitive that stores which were formerly operating in Trinidad and Tobago, providing the same Indian goods, which is a lot of garments, jewelry, furniture, footwear. Many of those stores have since closed down because they are unable to compete with the Indian exports. While they may be doing a good trade in Trinidad and Tobago, it is not without difficulty. There have actually been $1 million losses. The expo at Diwali Nagar in particular, the NCIC, that one in particular was burned down in 2014. Unfortunately, we are now in 2021, and the owner says the insurance company has not paid anything. Up until now, there has been no decision about why that place burned down. So he lost money and still has no explanation as to why. He has indeed restarted business and continues. I just want to draw your attention, though, to this particular article which popped up in 2013, prior to the fire, where the then High Commissioner to Trinidad and Tobago, Malay Mishra, commented that the Indian trade fairs may bear the name of India, but the government of India has nothing to do with these fairs. They distanced themselves from the trade fairs basically because the value of some of the products was low. Now, while this may appear to be very negative, the outcome was a positive one. It's a good thing that he made the comment that he did, because what eventually happened is that those merchants who were indeed bringing in substandard goods eventually left, and the others who were here increased the quality of the goods that they were bringing. So the buying public in Trinidad and Tobago was able to access better quality goods, and it worked well for them as well as for Trinidad and Tobago. So moving on from here, the next step would be to determine, well, how do we strengthen the relationship further, and how do we take care of people who are here, who are, for instance, working in these expos, the business owners who are in Trinidad and Tobago as a result of these expos, and all the other businesses that are going on in Trinidad and Tobago, the Indian supermarkets, the Indian restaurants, and those who work for them. So I can take questions on that if anyone would like to ask later. But what is key for us is what can India introduce, promote digitally, and sell to us in Trinidad and Tobago? Because at this point in time, our manufacturing industry is still rather low. But we must take into consideration the economy. Because at this point in time, we have had economic contraction, and this had started in 2016 and continues. And of course, the pandemic has not helped matters. There's a reduction, there will be a reduction in the imports. A few of the owners of the Indian expos are saying that the market for their products is already saturated. And unfortunately, because we are under a state of emergency, they are not earning revenue. So we have a lot of product in Trinidad and Tobago from India, which unfortunately will not be sold for a while. And so what will happen is that there will be a reduction in imports from India. However, we still depend on India for raw materials for our manufacturing industry. So because we are in an economic decline, in order to get out of that, we'll have to look at import substitution and, of course, export expansion. So the question really is, how can India help in that regard? One of the ways in which perhaps both countries can benefit is if India would move some production facilities to Trinidad. And given the interest of Indian businessmen in Trinidad in particular, well, Indian businessmen in particular, it might be a good idea to put that out to them. They can benefit because we have a skilled and professional labor force. Approximately 50% of the population is educated up to the tertiary level. We have approximately 52% labor participation rate, but that is possibly declining because there are a number of businesses closing down as a result of the lockdown having to do with the pandemic. But there are benefits to be derived from bringing those facilities here. Decreased cost of production, which will automatically decrease the cost of the goods and increase the quantities likely to be sold. But more importantly, let's not just focus on 1.4 million people in the Trinidad market. In 2012, India's economic transformation was mentioned by Dr. Suraj Rambachan, who was the then Minister of Foreign Affairs. Maybe BRIC would have to be, this acronym would have to be reconsidered because what's happening with all economies is going to likely change this. But India was earmarked as a source of new technology, which we wanted to import, and that has not changed. India is still a source of foreign direct investment, which we want to attract. And for India, we are still a gateway to the markets in the Caribbean region and Latin America, 8 million in total in the Caribbean alone. Maybe that's a drop in the bucket, because you could drop the entire population of the Caribbean into Bhopal and we still wouldn't have as many numbers as Bhopal does. But at the same time, it's more than the 1.4 million in Trinidad. And you also have access to all the free trade agreements that exist between Trinidad and Tobago and the Caribbean region and some countries in Latin America because of CARICOM. This would mean that we would have to look at possibly providing support. And a number of business owners have called for collaboration by way of the re-establishment of what is now defunct, the India, Trinidad and Tobago Chamber of Industry and Commerce, or a body that is similar to that. So perhaps Dr. Gopal might be able to put in a word or two there as to how we can lend greater assistance to the business owners in Trinidad and Tobago who are locals, as well as to those who are NRIs. And with that, I will close, and I'll be very happy to take any questions that you have. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Salima Mohammed, for your very detailed expose on our bilateral trade. This is true that our trade is comparatively very small and there's a lot of scope for its improvement. I remember the area of oil and petrochemicals, Ayurveda, insurance, film and music, pharmaceuticals and IT. These were some of the areas which were identified for increase in our bilateral trade and services. But unfortunately, the growth has been very limited so far. But I'm sure with the efforts of your High Commissioner in Delhi and our High Commissioner in Port of Spain, the things will improve in the coming years. So thank you very much for your detailed expose. And now I would like to introduce Dr. Kumar Mahabir, who is one of the very well-known scholars in Trinidad and Tobago. He did his PhD from the University of Florida, particularly in medical anthropology, a very, very innovative subject. He worked as assistant professor at the University of Trinidad and Tobago. He has authored 12 books so far, including one on medicinal and edible oil plants by East Indians of TNT. This book has been widely accepted by the people not only in TNT but all around the world. And he's now hosting what we call weekly Sunday night Zoom programs, which have become fairly international in scope. And he's actually contributing considerably in the field of Ayurveda and traditional medicine in Trinidad and Tobago. So may I request Dr. Kumar Mahabir to come on the screen and make his presentation. Kindly try to be as brief as you can. Thank you, Dr. Mahabir.
Yes. So thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Let me see how I can share my screen. It says, okay, so that part is okay. Share screen. So what do I do next?
Please reshare again.
Okay, so then I have to,
Dr. Mahabir, you can share the screen as you did before. Yes.
Dr. Mahabir is not with us. Maybe we can move to the next speaker, and when he rejoins, we can come back.
Okay. So now let me introduce Bindu Devki Nandan Maharaj, who is our next speaker. She will speak on educational curriculum at Mahatma Gandhi Institute for Cultural Cooperation. She has very rich experience of Indo-Trinidadian heritage. She expresses space, femininity, and identity through her writings. She has written, many articles over the years. She has been educator for almost 25 years and is presently moderator of the what we call India Caribbean Cultural Center weekly program June. She has extensive knowledge about the heritage of India and Trinidad and Tobago. So let us welcome to Bindu Devkinath Maharaj.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gupta, for such a wonderful welcome. I firstly would like to say I really feel honored to be part of this platform today. Daylight here, good nighttime on your side. Firstly, I would like to say that introduction, how you introduced us as descendants of indentureship, that was one of the most touching and I found most apt introductions that I've ever gotten in through that poem. And it really did touch and tug at some heartstrings in me as a descendant of indentureship, okay? And secondly, Dr. Gopal, you represent us well here. I'm hearing you for the first time, and you are doing much justice to your position and your portfolio in representing us. Thank you. Right? Okay, so today I will be discussing the Mahatma Gandhi Cultural Institute of Cultural Cooperation in terms of the India-Trinidad educational relationship. So let me share my screen now, and I hope that this goes seamlessly, right? I do hope so. Yes.
It will.
Window. Yes. Okay. So here we go. Okay, so I am looking at the India-Trinidad relations via the curriculum, the education curriculum from the Mahatma Gandhi Institute for Cultural Cooperation. So my name is Bindu Devkinath Maharaj, and I'm a fourth generation descendant of indentureship from Trinidad. So I found it fitting to introduce myself as that. What I will be looking at, and this is more so for our Indian brothers and sisters, across in India, because generally here in Trinidad, we do understand this, but having the exposure to many Hindustani people being in Trinidad, I've come to realize that there is not that part of that understanding of indentureship so much that has been taught in the Indian school curriculum about indentureship here. Now, that is just through my personal discussions and so on. So this is what I will do a very, very brief overview for viewers. So slavery was abolished in Trinidad in 1838, and there was a need for labor. So the Indian continent and subcontinent was checked, and Asia and so on. So there was indentured laborers coming from Indonesia, Java and so on. That didn't work out too well. And then India became that primary source of laborers. And our first shipment of laborers came to Trinidad in 1845. Now, it is not a glamorous thing, and I would refer to what Dr. Gupta said earlier when he described that journey. So I don't want to be redundant. So basically, that's the embodiment of that journey that my ancestors and the ancestors of us here in Trinidad would have faced. Now, approximately 85% were Hindus and 15% Muslims. So I don't want to go through too much time in discussing this, but this is the demographic basically that would have come. Now, there was a contract period for 5 years. So indentureship was in the form of a contract, and there was that contract period of 5 years of labor. Now, terms and conditions, not nice at all. Again, it was referred to in that very, very pertinent poem. Now, after that period of contract ended, the East Indian indenture had 3 options. One, in order to return home and get that return voyage home, they had to go back into a period of labor again for 5 years in order to basically qualify for that return trip to India. The second option was to bear that cost independently. Now, as the moderator for ICC Zoom show that Dr. Kumar is the founder of, I've learned that along the way that there are several people who would have returned, several, but not a bulk, of course, but people would have chosen to leave and go back to their homelands. So they would have done so independently. And the third option that our peoples would have faced was stay in Trinidad. And basically, this forms the basis of that India-Trinidad connection that had been formed since then, and that has created this diasporic connection between you all in the East and us in the West. All right? Now, I'll move on to, again, brief overview, because this is again for our viewing and listening members and audience members. What is the evidence of that undeniable link from our legacy of indentureship? Religion. Religion is practiced in abundance in terms of Hinduism, different forms of Hinduism, Sanatana Hinduism, Sanatan Dharma, and so on. Then we have Islam, which is practiced. That's for those of you who are familiar with Trinidad, you know that this is something that is known. Music, we do have our own form of different forms of music, but our bhajans, our qasidas, our Bollywood films, songs, and so on, they are rampant in Trinidad. Foods, of course, our foods. Dr. Gopal mentioned the doubles at the beginning when we were chatting a bit. So doubles has, that's something that has been derived in Trinidad, but it's recognized as Indian. And it has also become the consummate national dish, right? Other ones, architecture, our mosques, our temples are very Indian in its design. Agriculture, we all also are very agricultural based, although there is a shift from, and there has been a shift from where we were in terms of being an agrarian society, and moving now to education and development, getting into all sorts of fields. Agriculture is still important to our peoples here. Wedding rituals, very, very Indian. Our cultural practices, all the different things that we would have done when you have a baby, a chatti, a barahi, all these little things, they are still observed and practiced in Trinidad. The institution of family, being an extended family, it's still, I know that after industrialization would have birthed the rise of the nuclear family. And although that has happened in Trinidad as well, we do have a shift to the nuclear family. We also do have that reliance and that foundation of the extended family, which is very, very important to the passing of our cultural identity to our different generations. Death rituals, again, same, close it up, please. Same, excuse me, just some noise here, so please just basic a little thunderstorm here. Now we move on so that's the evidence that if you come to Trinidad, that is what you would see happening. And Dr. Gupta and Dr. Gopal, I'm sure, can attest to that, having spent time, well, Dr. Gupta as being a person who would have come from India, spent some time in Trinidad, and then returned. Now, this part here would become a bit redundant since Dr. Gopal would have spoken about the role of the High Commission of India. But to me, it was necessary. I guess the teacher in me, I like to create a little backdrop and a background so that there's a place and space to understand things. So what is the role of, or what are the roles to foster goodwill and understanding between Trinidad and India, to promote bilateral cultural cooperation in art, culture, both at government and NGO levels, to promote a greater awareness of India's composite cultural heritage, and to house a reference library that is accessible and attainable by all of us here in Trinidad. So that was just a brief overview in terms, kind of, stating the place, because it is through the Indian High Commission or the High Commission of India that we have the Mahatma Gandhi Institute for Cultural Cooperation, the Mahatma Gandhi Institute for Cultural Cooperation, sorry. And it is through them. So their role, that is the role, and I needed to focus a bit on that and recognize. Now, what are the different educational programs being offered? So they basically could be categorized into programs where our diaspora, in terms of us here in Trinidad, can access things and go to India, and in terms of scholarships. So we have cultural and Ayurveda scholarships. So this here is basically the advertisement that I got from the page of the Indian High Commission, where students are asked, we can facilitate undergraduate, postgrad degrees, doctoral research degrees in accounts, agricultural science, arts, commerce, all the different necessary things that are really being afforded to us as being members of Diaspora. So we have that cultural and Ayurveda scholarship that people can access. Now, who can access it? Who are the people? People are people who are descendants of India, who are citizens living abroad, and so on. Next, we have the Ayush scholarships. And this is this is a field that I have so much curiosity about. I wish I had known about it significantly when I was doing my studies, because I find this fascinating, given the whole big pharma concept and so on. And then you see within Western and European spaces how much Ayurveda, things like yoga and homeopathy and stuff like that, is being used in the Western world. And yet I think enough credence is given to the root of it, which is India. So these are scholarships that the diasporic residents can access, well, through applications and so on. Then we have scholarship programs for children of the diaspora. Now, my son is 18, my big son, he's 18, and he is presently doing what's the equivalent to CAPE, which is A-levels. And I'm thinking about one of these for him. So children and persons of Indian origin, overseas citizens of Indian non-resident Indians are offered scholarships to pursue bachelor degrees in English. Now, when I said English, I meant being taught in English. And there are 3 to 4 year programs. You have the BE and the BTech in engineering, architecture, technology, the sciences. You have the BA and the BSc in liberal arts, commerce, management, computers, journalism, and so on. So all of these are different scholarship programs that India provides to Trinidad and other members of the diaspora community through scholarships. Next, we have programs in Trinidad by the Mahatma Gandhi Institute for Cultural Cooperation that we can stay here and access. We don't need to reach you all there. We are here, and this is what we access here. We have Hindi classes, and that goes on. That has been going on for a very, very long time. So the High Commission of India has been providing facilities of Hindi learning to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Classes are for beginners, intermediate, advanced courses, and Hindi conversation. So, and this is in a way to bridge that gap and make Hindi more accessible to us, where in Trinidad our national language is standardized English. Now, when you go to the Mahatma Gandhi Institute page on Facebook, instead of just listing things, what I have here is the Facebook link for the page. And what I want you all to look at is, so this is the Facebook page. And if you look, you would see some of the different activities. So you're seeing, you will see get a catchment of our diaspora, our peoples. You would see tabla, you'll see kada, tabla teacher and students at UTT 10th anniversary being performed. You'll see their fashion shows, International Day of Yoga, challenges in terms of quality education. So there are conventions and seminars. There's a yoga blog, tribute to Pandit Jasraj, cultural evening of Indian classical dance performances, Holi, cultural evening, and so on. So that is, going through what we have here in Trinidad to access through the Mahatma Gandhi Institute for Cultural Cooperation. Now, what I wanted to, I'm trying to find back right. Now, basically, that is what are being offered. But what I wanted to do is to go further and do a little assessment of the outcomes or / impacts of education relations through India and Trinidad. What are they? One, so I'm looking at it in a very broad manner. Firstly, because any relations between Trinidad and Tobago and India will provide initiatives for the diasporas to connect, participate, and invest bilaterally. And I would refer to what Ms. Shalima had to say, that need for investment, and not us investing across onto the east, but that investment and location and so on. So when that bridge has been gapped, or at least that connection has been made through this, this can happen, investment. Another one. Now, this really sticks with me. Why does education relation play such an important role to us? I tell you why. It prevents cultural loss and while promoting cultural retention. Now, what do I mean by that? When the whole industry, I'll refer to industrialization again. So industrialization birthed, I wouldn't say birthed, promoted capitalism. And with capitalism came the need for work, a workforce. And our education system in Trinidad would have worked to create a workforce, creators, trainers. And I could refer to Michel Foucault when he talked about power and control. you need that power and control was necessary to get the masses going in the stream. Now, this would have come with us through our English rule. Remember, we got our independence from Britain, and those models of education were basically designed to create and facilitate a workforce that was taught and was programmed, in my opinion, to be one of based on oppression. And I will refer to Paulo Freire in Pedagogy of the Oppressed, where he would have spoken about education to keep us as the descendants of slavery and indentureship in a particular space. Now, with that, with power being over us, with oppression, with that comes cultural loss. And this is where I really appreciate what the Indian High Commission is doing. What it's doing is, oh Lord, I've gone back there. Sorry. Okay, I'll just leave it there. What it's doing, it is actually helping us prevent that cultural loss. Now, when we came to my descendants, being a fourth generation, when we came here, there was a continued practice of culture. And there was a fight by many to maintain our cultural, religious, ethnic identity. Along the way, though, just before independence and so on, there was this drive. There was this, I would say, we had my foreparents and people of other generation, in order to get jobs and so on, they had to give up their religions, Hinduism and so on, and convert, change their names, change their religion, absorb a new identity. And there would have been, had that just been continued, there would have been such a great level of cultural loss. So what I do appreciate about the Indian High Commission and reaching out to the diaspora by giving us these India-based models of our cultural things like music. I have so many friends who are teachers who would have accessed degrees in music and dance and who have come back and teach. And they teach Hindi and dance and music and so on. And it's beautiful. And they would have accessed that and gone to India, trained, and come back. Now, right, I would have alluded to this earlier, but I think I would like to readdress it a bit. I think by doing this convention here today, this seminar, and also by having this movement of people from India to Trinidad, from Trinidad to India, through education and educational programs, there would be a greater awareness to its Indian citizens there about our part of history that may not have been known. We had Dr. Huang, right? And he alluded to this. He said, if you are Chinese, in his discussion on our Zoom program, he said, if you are Chinese living in China, you're not worried about your identity. But if you are Chinese living in America, you are worried about your identity because there's contrast and there's a space for you and it's about finding your identity and so on. And in Trinidad, that's what we face. Because although we are rooted here since 1845, we are still a very diverse space with many ethnicities, races, religions, and Indians here are always in a kind of a battle a lot of times to find a space that we know is due to us because we are residents here, we are citizens, right? Now, I really want to, okay, number 4, last one, reorienting education for the diaspora community through making India's internationally known high standards in education accessible. So this kind of summarizes it, because it does, by doing this, as I said, when I was a child, I wish I had known about scholarships and so on through the High Commission of India, as well as the Mahatma Gandhi's Institute, and at these education-based relations. We in Trinidad have access to some things that's rooted in Indianness, based on our history, based on our ancestry, and it has become accessible. And for that, as a diasporic member, I say thank you. And lastly, I like the fact that India, as a subcontinent, has taken a certain amount of responsibility for the advancement and exposure for people who left India many generations ago. So our folks here, we would have we left you all since 1845, and yet by providing these educational opportunities and having these relationships with us, I see it as taking some amount of responsibility. However, I do think that for this to become more acceptable, I think I would suggest that the Indian citizens in India become more aware historically of the roles and the place that your diaspora has in history. All right. So with that, I would like to say thank you. I'm going to stop sharing. And right. So thank you, everyone. Thank you very much. And I really do appreciate the opportunity to present here. And I look forward to hearing what the other presenters have to say. Namaste.
Namaste, namaste. Thank you so much, Ms. Bindu Devkinath Maharaj. I really appreciate your presentation. I know there has to be more awareness in India about the Indian diaspora abroad. It is not enough. It is not taught in the schools. I wish it is done. And I am happy that you have, in fact, all of you who are based in Trinidad and Tobago and other countries in the Caribbean have preserved Indian cultural values, whether it's religion, music, food, wedding rituals, and architecture and other forms of culture in those remote parts of the world. And you are, in fact, I would say the great preserver of Indian traditions abroad. So I pay tribute to all of you for doing this great and splendid job over the years. So thank you so much. I hope we will continue to work in that direction. And now Dr. Kumar Mahabir is back. So I would request Dr. Kumar Mahabir to start his presentation. I already gave his introduction before, and he doesn't need an introduction because he's an author of many books and he has contributed many papers, and he is one of the major contributors to this conference today. So Dr. Kumar Mahabir, the floor is yours.
Yes, I have shared my screen, but I am not seeing it.
Yes, it is there now.
But I am not seeing the PowerPoint.
I request you once more, please do not share the entire screen. Share just specific window, please.
Okay, so what do I do now?
Please go to the share option and select the window, the specific window, like you did the previous time.
It says stop sharing, so I have to stop sharing.
Yes,
and go back?
stop share now.
Right, stop share.
Yeah, and start again.
Start again. Share screen. And
now don't share the entire screen, share the window.
Yeah. Share screen again. Okay. So what do I share window? Okay, I see it now. But when I click share window, nothing is coming up.
Maybe the window is not yet open. Please open up PowerPoint. Is the PowerPoint open? Yeah, it is there. Yeah.
Okay, but
No, you
I
have
am
shared
not.
the entire screen once more.
Okay, so go back. Stop sharing again.
Yeah.
Okay. Stop share.
Yeah.
Okay. Share.
I think his internet connection is very weak.
But okay, but it's nothing is
I
coming
think
up.
your internet connection is very weak. I will request you to make your presentation without sharing the screen.
Oh, you think that could be the reason?
Yes, I think so. Your
Okay,
internet
but
connection is very weak. Yeah.
all right, but I have a lot of images. So okay, if
I
that is
think
what we
one
are.
thing can be done. Can you please send it through email to just send it to Dr. Gupta? Maybe we can show it from our end.
All right. Okay. So let me do that. Yeah. So
Also,
I
if
will
you can just send it directly to the foundation.
You
The
can send
email.
it later on, but you can make your presentation now.
No, but I have a lot of images, so I need to show the PowerPoint. But can I email it now?
Yeah, please, please.
Okay. Hold on 1 second. Just 1 second. I'll do it now. So I have to close it first, and then it would be sent. Okay, hold on.
Okay, one option
Yes.
is there. Why don't you just go and open the PowerPoint presentation directly? Let's see. I think it will work. Please open the PowerPoint presentation. Go to the PowerPoint.
Yeah. So it's open.
We should be able to see it.
If
Have
you're
you opened
seeing
the
it,
PowerPoint?
yeah, it's open.
We
Yeah.
don't see it.
You don't see it.
No. You shared the
Oh.
entire screen. Okay, then email it here.
Yeah, email it. So I'll email it to Dr. Gupta because I have his email address. So then we can probably have Charlene while we're doing that. She can present. I probably present last.
Sure. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's do that way. Yes. So you should have the last word.
Yeah, but people might be tired too.
No,
They're
no,
anxious
there's
to
no
leave.
problem. Okay.
Okay.
So we will now have Charlene Maharaj. Charlene Maharaj is MSc Economics from the University of the West Indies. She is the member of the Trinidad and Tobago Economic Association, which is a very prestigious organization. She has also worked with airlines and tourism sectors on niche marketing and consumer lifestyle research. She will make her presentation on encounters between India and Trinidadians and Indian Trinidadians. Indians, sorry. So the floor is yours, Charlene. Please go ahead and make your presentation.
Thank you
And
very
try
much.
to be as brief as you can.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. What I would ask you to do when I reach 12 minutes and 1 second, please do not be afraid to intervene and interrupt me at that point in time.
Okay.
Good morning, good evening, everyone. Namaste. Thank you very much for having me here. Mr. Ambassador, thank you very much for being with us today. You, Bindu in her presentation mentioned you all in the East and us in the West. Ambassador Gopal also mentioned the cultural veneer of the West and how that impacts us until we delve into our history and our connection to India. So there is an overriding Western culture that flavors us. And when we do interact with someone from India, there may be barriers that we need to overcome. And that is what I want to present today. So allow me to get into that. And whilst my presentation, I know everyone spoke on important matters and very serious. I think I'm raising some important cultural issues, but in a package that's supposed to be very light. So I'm asking everyone to enjoy it. It's actually based on a personal story. So it's supposed to be fun, light, enjoy it, and hopefully I am able to deliver the essence. Okay. Are we good? Is everyone hearing me?
Yes, yes.
Okay, good. A social and cultural encounter in Guyana. Why is this important? It's important because we have global movement of persons. We have the reopening of our borders. And indeed, we have more adventurous mindsets among our younger persons. Indo-Trinidadians and Indians will meet each other in many parts of the world, not just in Trinidad, not just in India or in the diaspora communities. So what are the Indo-Trini and the Indian going to encounter, and what are the relations going to look like on Western soil or even neutral soil? I'm going to share a personal story that took place several years. I don't even want to say how many years, when I met an Indian in Guyana. Guyana is an English-speaking Caribbean country located in South America, which is largely Spanish-speaking, save for Brazil, which speaks Portuguese. And why is this story important? This story is important because social encounters may actually lead to new opportunities. It allows us to build networks. Very often we tend to underestimate the importance of social interactions, whilst on the other hand, acknowledging that one of the greatest influences in the world today is social media. Even during business meetings and negotiations, there is an underlying cultural exchange that is not overt, but gets discussed sometimes at the water coolers and the lunchrooms, and may influence the outcomes of those business transactions. Moreover, as time passes, whilst we tend to forget the details of a business meeting or a business transaction, the memories of a great meal, a fun time, remain etched in our memories. And this is often where we find the essence of relations and relationships. It is a simple story, but carries important dimensions. And what I would ask us to do is, even as we enjoy it, to zoom in on the initial social and cultural walls that are mounted, the stereotyping and labeling of a people because of interaction with maybe just one or two persons, the cultural expectations during social exchange as persons mentally either seek common ground or seek to expand differences. So this is my story. I was posted in Guyana for a new job. Guyana is an absolutely beautiful country, natural resources. It has plantation architecture, which is getting rid of today, unfortunately, for the monstrosities of concrete buildings and glass buildings. But still, it has preserved some of its old buildings made of purple heart and hardwood. It has one of the largest and longest rivers in the southern hemisphere, in the South America, called the Essequibo River. This is me, Trinidad. Very social, very outgoing, very outspoken. This is part of our culture. This is who an Indian meets when they bounce up an Indo-Trini. Yes, Trinidadian will look alike, but there are cultural differences. This is close to where I lived in Guyana. Close to the seawall, there's the Atlantic on the right-hand side and a building on the left. Several buildings, but this particular compound that held a lot of expats. Expats like myself from Trinidad, expats from Antigua, Nigeria, Jamaica, and indeed India. Now, on my first day being there, I met no one from who was my neighbor. It was an empty place, but I could tell it was occupied. By day 3, there was someone out on the landing. I raised my hand in the usual, very sociable way. Hi, how are you? The response was absolutely muted. It was an Indian guy from India. I heard his accent, and it was not a welcoming interaction that I thought that I would get. So I was a bit put off at that time. And I said, all right, fine. I turned my back and I probably twisted up my face at that time. Okay, that's a neighbor, no problem. One day, we were having a delegation over in Guyana. I was working long hours and got home in the wee hours of the morning, trying to get some rest. There is my Indian neighbor arriving, coming up the stairs, shouting, making noise, and that was me. That was me at the second interaction. It may not have been a face-to-face interaction, but certainly it was something that jarred me. At that point in time, falling from the first one where it was not a warm greeting, I'm like, really? So the stereotyping in my head began. The labeling began. Is this what this is going to be like? Is this what India is like in reality? I have a perception. But I'm now beginning to label based on one and question what my understanding of India and Indians are like. Next day, I could not believe the same thing was happening. You've got to be kidding. What the Helsinki? Sorry, Ambassador, Helsinki is the capital of Finland, so I'm not using any bad words here. I could not believe this was happening. I have to get up in the morning, get to work, and that was the day the delegation was coming. I built up my strength, got out on the landing, and said, good night. Listen, I have to get up in the morning. I have had a hard day, and I would really appreciate you having some respect for that space. I could not believe, but the Indian guy was even toned, no emotion again, but all right, okay, Miss Lady, if that's what it is going to be like. But as I turned around, I could feel the stares in my back. I could feel the arrows coming through my back, and I'm like, but listen, I need to do this. Next morning, I got up. I walked down the stairway and was rushing off to work. But I realized, oh my God, it's going to be a long day. I went upstairs, got my heels, started to walk up and down the steps. And remember, it was a wooden floor. I got to the car and I remembered, oh my God, I forgot something. I went back up the stairway with my heels, clocks, on the wooden floor. Out comes my Indian neighbor. Listen, ma'am, good morning. I work very late at night. I go to the interior, and you're getting up this morning, and you walking down there with heels up and down and expect me to rest. At that time, I realized poetic justice, karma was coming my way. Because there I was, disturbing this gentleman that early in the morning. I started to laugh. And I said, oh my God, yes, karma. And with that breakdown of becoming vulnerable and softening of the demeanors, we both started to laugh. That was the turning point with the whole interaction. Vulnerability, openness, authenticity. That moved our relationship from being strained neighbors to becoming brothers and sisters almost, where I can rely on this Indian gentleman, absolutely nothing romantic in it, but rely on him like a family member. Because when you're outside of your home space, those closest to you become your family. And it is important for us to begin to understand each other and our cultural space. there I was, a Trinidadian, very social, very open, but didn't understand what the interaction was, which I was going to learn about later on. As our friendship grew and developed, I asked him, who do you think was the greatest player or greater player between Lara and Tendulkar? Looking back now, I think he actually was just being very courteous when he said, I think it's Lara. And so our friendship became even closer. The cultural chasm and the preconceived notions that we carry can impact how we interact with each other. It can impact the relationships that we want to develop, even those that the ambassador spoke about, the trade that we spoke about. And there's something that I discovered in some of my research, a concept that I'm going to define as that first interaction, because of the Western veneer and the Eastern, that can speak to something called, I am not your type of Indian. And interestingly, it is not something I discovered personally only. In Guyana, I was also doing some research among some Afro-Guyanese, and that came up as a concept. Afro-Americans visiting Guyana and Africans visiting Guyana, that cultural disparity created, I'm not that your kind of black or that kind of Afro. And that is something that we have to be aware of and break down as we move through life. Relations are best fostered by real efforts to understand, to be open, to be authentic, to get down into the deeper cultural space outside of the tourist and business spaces. And really, we should not ignore the small things. In my story, a pair of heels and Guyana's hardwood floors were the turning point. It may mean that learning the words that are unique to each group, like lime, doubles, pecan, corn soup, shark and bake, or the twangs and the accents, oh God, for oh God, may be that connecting point that we are looking for. And as I discovered more about my Indian neighbor, I realized that his initial reaction was not something that was intended to be cold or harsh in any way. It was actually his culture that he does not interact with females in a frontal manner. And that is something I learned along the way. And I'm hoping that by sharing this, we understand the role of culture and the small things in the bigger picture of business, trade, and cultural exchange. I thank you all very, very much. And I really hope that you all enjoyed this session.
Thank you so much, Charlene Maharaj. It has been very interesting to listen to your personal experience, how actually the connecting people is the most difficult part. And once you connect, everything is possible. And this is what you experienced in that in Guyana. I remember when you want to work with somebody, you have to first connect, and then everything will be open, and you will have a fantastic relationship. So very, very nice to hear about your story. Thank you very much for your presentation. And it reminds me all the liming and doubles and chutneys and steel pan and cricket and calypso. All those things of Trinidad and Tobago reminds me very much. So thank you so much. And now we are back to Dr. Kumar Mahabir. I hope this time we have the presentation successfully.
Yes.
The ball is in your
I hope
court
so
now,
too. I think the PowerPoint is at your end, your admin end, so he or she will show the PowerPoint.
Don't worry, they are very professional. They will take care of it.
Yes, so I see it and it's full screen, which is nice. So my topic, let's hope the saying is true that you leave the best for the last. We'll see how that goes. So my topic is entitled The Indian Trinidadian Contribution to World Civilization. And I am happy to say that this is really a momentous occasion because I have just been officially appointed to teach at the University of Guyana, which is nearby. Okay, so my second slide, which I am not seeing.
You will see. You continue. You will.
Okay.
They
So
will show you the slides.
yeah. So in the it's animated, right? So for this presentation, next slide. For this presentation, I am going to look at what makes us unique in the Caribbean and in the world, because Trinidad and Tobago is just one island, an archipelago, and a chain of islands in the Caribbean. And what makes us stand out? How are we unique in the Caribbean and the world? Yes, you can do the animation throughout to the entire screen. Right. So what can we find here? Yeah, that's nice. What can we find here that you cannot find in any of the other islands in the Caribbean? And what can you find here that you cannot find anywhere else in the world? What have we invented, or what have we recreated? And specifically, what have we as Indo-Trinidadians, or we call ourselves Indians, makes us one of the wonders of the world? So this is a work in progress, and I welcome your ideas and your comments at the end. Next slide. Right. So this is the number of Indians that came. Here you can go right down the text because it's animated. So this is a graph showing you how many Indians from India came to the West Indies. They came from mainly Uttar Pradesh and Bihar, and some from the Madras area. And you'd see from this graph that the majority went to Guyana. That's that yellow bar on the left. And then the second largest number came to Trinidad. That's the blue bar on the left. So approximately 500,000 people came to the West Indies between 1838 and 1917. Yes, next. Right, so we came here, all right, during that time period. Yeah, next slide. And you would see in Trinidad and Tobago, where I'm located, and of which I'm talking about, this is the population divided into ethnic groups. You would see Indians, we call ourselves Indians, represented by that yellow piece of that slice there, of that pie chart, yellow. We are numerically the largest ethnic group in Trinidad and Tobago, but just by like a 1%, because people of African descent, represented by the red, they form the second largest ethnic group in the country. Now, interestingly, we have a CSO, Central Statistical Office, has categorized and identify a group of people called Douglas, meaning mixed Indian and African, and they form 8% of the population. The Douglas are different to the mix. Mix are people, usually people mostly of African descent, who we call them, and they call themselves red. So you know, they are a red skin, but of African descent. Next slide. Yeah. So right. So we have produced to the world. We have given the world. No, we have given the world V.S. Naipaul, who won a Nobel Prize for Literature in 2001, and he has written a number of novels and travelogues on India. He's the only Trinidadian to win a Nobel Prize in Trinidad and this country. Yet not a single building or road has been named after him. So there's a lot of discrimination against people of Indian descent in Trinidad, but that's a topic for a whole new webinar. Next slide. And then we have Husay or Muharram in Trinidad. And go back. Husay or Muharram in Trinidad. And it's celebrated only in Trinidad, not in neighboring Guyana or Suriname. And a book has been written on Husay in Trinidad called Husay Trinidad. So this makes Trinidad unique to the Caribbean and to the world, because it's the only country in the Western Hemisphere that observes Muharram. Next slide. And there are remnants of Husay or Muharram in Belize and in Jamaica. but we have retained much of it in a place called St. James in the city area and in Cedras, which is a rural community. Now, these are video. I don't know if you could show it at your end. If not, we are going to skip it. So let's try it. Can you? It's about 2 minutes long. You'd have to share the sound too. If you cannot show it, then we're going to skip it. All right, so we skip it. And so, yeah, Indians, we have invented tassa, but I must qualify that statement. We have invented that distinctive ensemble, that arrangement of tassa drumming, because I have witnessed tassa in Mauritius. Tassa drumming, they have the janj and so on, but that musical arrangement which we have is unique to the world. Even India doesn't have it in the way we have arranged it. But definitely we have created our own hands. These are musical patterns like the calypso and dingole and so on. Next slide. Right. And again, we have produced in Trinidad and Tobago a female prime minister, the first female prime minister in the Indian diaspora, Kamla Prasad Visesa, and she's pictured there in the middle next to an icon, Satmaraj. And not even in Mauritius, not even Fiji, not even in Africa, nowhere else do you have a female, first Indian female prime minister. Next slide. So this is our contribution, and this is what makes us unique. The next slide. Right. Again, what have we created? What have we produced that makes us one of the wonders of the world? It's a Hanuman Murti, a tall statue. It's the only one of its kind in the world. It's located in a place called Orange Field in Karapi, China, and it's 85 feet tall. Yes. Next slide. And another contribution we have made to the world is the temple in the sea. Again, the only one of its kind in the world. Because when I visit Suriname, they say they have a temple in the sea too. So I went to visit it. It's on the coast. This temple, what makes it unique? It was built by one man using a bicycle and buckets on the handlebars. And this temple, this is an aerial view, was built from the seabed. It was not built on a rock as in other places, maybe in India too, on an islet or a rock and so on. This was built from the seabed up. Next slide. And of course, we have Mastana Bahar with longest running television show for 46 years. Well, because of COVID and everything else, it's not being screened, but it's the longest running talent show in Trinidad and Tobago. Next slide. And I had a clip to show, but because of the problems that we have encountered, I would skip that. And we have right? Okay. So and we have also produced Dr. Rudranath Kapileu, who is credited to have invented a theory called the Kapileu theory. His theory of rotation and gravity exposed flaws in Einstein's theory. Let's click again. And he contributed significantly to the whole application of the science behind sending rockets and other objects to the moon and to space. Yeah, next slide. All right, so he's been described as the Caribbean Einstein, and then we have a course called West Indian Literature or Caribbean Literature, and this has been created by a guy named Kenneth Ramchan, Professor Kenneth Ramchan, and he published a seminal work called The West Indian Novel and Its Background, and because of this man that you have a course called West Indian Literature or Caribbean Literature in all parts of the world. Next slide. And we have a museum. We have an Indian Caribbean museum. Nowhere else in the Caribbean do you have a public museum like this, right? Opened in May 2006. It's there, open, running for 15 years, and it's managed by the Mahasabha, but it's open to the public. Next slide. Open to the public every day except Monday and a Tuesday. Yes, and in that museum you have a lot of historical photographs like this one, which we have sourced from eBay and rare books and postcards and so on. Next slide. And then we have archival documents. It is really truly a Caribbean museum, because we have documents and artifacts from all parts of the Caribbean, including St. Kitts. This is an old bank statement record sourced from St. Kitts. It's dated 1864. Next slide. Right, so we have artifacts like this. This is the jata, that stone mill that all of us had before the introduction of these metal hand mill. Next slide. So there are a lot of songs about this. You see the music. We have a lot of photographs too. This is threshing rice or beating rice. This was taken in a rural community in which I was born called Plamita. Yeah, next slide. And again, we have documentary films in the museum. And if we had time, and if the technology was good to us, so I could have shown clips, but we would bypass this clip from the BBC called "How the British Reinvented Slavery." Yeah, next slide. So skip that. Skip that. Right, we have beautiful temples that look at the aesthetics of this temple. Beautiful temples and mosques in Trinidad, and some old churches. The older churches in Trinidad would be Presbyterian origin, because they were the first missionaries to come to look to convert the Hindus. Next slide. And then we have Ramlila, perhaps the oldest form of free outdoor folk theater in the Caribbean. Now, this is unique, and as I said before, Trinidad is a wonder of the world and is a place to visit. Everybody from India should visit Trinidad and Tobago, because this is staged, Ramlila is staged in Trinidad and Tobago, and not in neighboring Guyana, not in Suriname. It's recently been introduced, but we have this ongoing form of folk theater running for over 140 years. Next slide. Right, perform. So it's unrivaled record of this open air form of theater that's been staged every single year without exception, except during these COVID times. And so we are involved in sports too, but unfortunately not in football. This is the Soca Warriors team, but you would not see a single Indian there. Next slide. But we are very much involved in horse racing, and it's something interesting. Even in countries like Jamaica, where we have lost almost all forms of cultural retention, Indian cultural retention, Indians dominate horse racing even in these countries, in Jamaica. So a lot of Indian jockeys. Next slide. And you see the names there, but the screen is a bit too small. So next slide. So Indians tend to dominate every aspect of horse racing, from the grooms, majority grooms of Indian descent, the owners and so on. Next slide. The owners, the jockeys, the trainers, right? And again, I had a video clip to show you, but unfortunately we can't show it. So I'm coming to the end. Next slide. Right, these are racehorse owners. You see the Maniram Maharaj and other Maharaj there, and so on. Muslims, Shariza, Ahmad, and so on. A lot of Indians coming from various religious groups involved in horse racing. Next slide. It's almost at the end. And of course, we have invented chutney music, right? So I would have shown you a clip again if the technology was good to us. So we'd have to bypass that. This is Ravi B, and I would have shown you a video clip here. Next slide. I think we have about 2 or 3 slides again, and then we are done. And we have invented our own types of roti. During the Q&A, I will ask Shalima to respond if you have questions about our own roti, paratha roti, dal puri roti, and so on. There's nothing, it's similar to India, but not the same. So in that way, we stand out in the world, and this is our contribution to the world. Next slide. I think we have about just 2 again. And I would have shown you a video clip of a Chinese guy who made a thing. All right. So that brings me to the end, and I apologize for the technology. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kumar Mahabir. It was a wonderful presentation. I found it very interesting. The unique contribution of Trinidadian, Indo-Trinidadians to the world. I think each of the slides present a very, what you say, special features and characteristics of you people. This is what you have, it's the result of what you call blend of variety of experiences, which has some Indian, some African, some European, and some American parts in all of them. But wonderful to see that. Now, I would like to conclude, but before that, I would first like to thank Tillotoma Foundation and its director, Dr. Soham Das, for organizing this conference. He has done a wonderful task of organizing many conferences. I have been part of this foundation for a while, and we have been able to organize many conferences to make people aware about India's relations with different countries. So thank you so much, Dr. Somdas. You have been behind the screen all the time, but your contribution is very, very well recognized, and so is the contribution of your other colleagues who have made this event possible. Now, I would like to thank profoundly, of course, the High Commissioner, His Excellency Dr. Roger Gopal, who made a wonderful contribution, and he is taking interest in Indian history, which is very fascinating to me. He's going to the bottom of the Saraswati River and taking sand from there. It's very, I would like to benefit from that, because I'm writing a large number of articles on Indian heritage these days, and they are being published practically every week to 2 weeks. And I think your research could contribute to my research as well in that process. So thank you very much for doing that contribution as being of Indian descent. So this would be the service to India from a person of Indian descent. So thank you very much, Your Excellency. And thanks to all of you for your wonderful presentations. I would like to say that Trinidad and Tobago is very unique. I have not seen such Ram Leelas which I have seen in Trinidad and Tobago, because they do not understand Hindi. They first convert the Ram Leela into Roman, and then they enact it in Hindi. And it's a very fascinating expression. I have seen, people singing wonderful Hindi songs, but without understanding the meaning of it, because they have lost Hindi as language there. But it has been a fantastic experience. The music drives them. The music of India is in their blood, vibrating all the time. Whether it is, bhajan, whether it is, other forms of music. I have seen Kumar Sonu, I have seen Nitin Mukesh performing there on a stage. Of course, we have a lot of Indian films which are very popular. We have 3 Indian chairs, one in history, one in Hindi, and another in Ayurveda. That were the status when I left Trinidad, but maybe it has changed. And so there are a lot of interaction which is going on in different fields between our 2 countries, and your presentations have enriched that that interaction. I want to tell this to the Indian authorities, that we must teach our students in India about Indian diaspora abroad. Most of the people in India do not know about Indian people in Trinidad, about people in Mauritius, about people in Fiji, about people in Guyana. I think that is our joint heritage, and that should be made available to the generations which are going to, come in India. They should know this heritage, and they should actually become part of that heritage. We definitely lack in trade and economic relations. They need to increase. We have to work on that direction much more. I fully agree that our relations in trade and economics are comparatively very poor. We have to work on that. On the cultural side, we need to make sure that relationship is further enriched and continues to grow. I would also like to take this opportunity to pay my tribute to Bal Krishna Naipaul, who was a very good friend of mine and who was younger brother of Elder Naipaul, who passed away recently a few months ago. I was constantly in touch with him. Whenever I went to Canada, I met him. He presented his books to me. I presented my books to him. He was a great lover of India, and he has written many books dedicated to India like his elder brother. So my tribute to him. And once again, I would like to thank all the people who made this event possible, and to all the presenters who make very rich presentation. And I would request we can organize another conference on very specific topics rather than going into the generalities, to create greater awareness of Trinidad in India. It is extremely important, and it is important for Indian generations who do not know much about our heritage in the Caribbean. So thank you very much to all of you, to Your Excellency, to all the presenters, and your presence has uh, actually rekindled my wonderful memories in your wonderful country. So thank you so much. I'm Please pay my respect to all our common friends, to all our collaborators in that wonderful nation. Thank you very much, and thanks a lot to Tillotoma Foundation for organizing this conference. Thank you and good night.
Yes. Thank
And
you
good
all.
morning.
Thank you.